When you're ready?
The recording is started.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Good evening, fellow commissioners and the general public. My name is Michael Champness. I'm the chair of the Transportation Advisory Commission. Before we begin, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the county website and on YouTube. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by new state legislation and FOIA, the Transportation Advisory Commission needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the commission is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. I will ask each commission member participating in this meeting to state your name and location from which you're participating when I mention your name. At large, Linda Spurley.
I am participating from my home in scenic Clifton, Virginia.
Thank you very much. Braddock District, Kevin Morse.
I think I'm finally in from Burke, Virginia.
Fantastic. Welcome. Drainsville District, I am here. Hunter Mill District, Kelly Westenhoff.
I am here from lovely downtown Reston. I'm stealing Mary Pauline's line.
She may be the same place. We'll find out. Mason District, Roger Hoskin. Okay, Roger, I think you're muted right now. I see you're on the lineup.
Okay. Roger Hoskin in historic Falls Church, Virginia.
Falls Church. Unfortunately, don't have time to write all that down in my little notes, but historic location, I'm sure it is. Mount Vernon District, Pete Sitnick.
Pete Sitnick, Mount Vernon District. It's very historic, but I won't try to challenge anybody else.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Lee District, Alexis Glenn.
Alexis Glenn is here in Alexandria.
Fantastic. Providence District, Jeremy Hancock.
Hi, Jeremy in Falls Church.
Fantastic. In Springfield, Eric Thiel.
Hi, here from Fairfax Station, Virginia.
Fairfax Station. Sully District, David Skiles.
Giles Chantilly.
Not to make too big a point of it, welcome, David. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Fairfax Area Disability Services Board, Mary Pauline Jones.
Mary Pauline Jones here from the wonderful town of Herndon.
Fantastic. As I saw a note there, hail, hail, the gang is all here. Fantastic. Appreciate everybody's making it this evening. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Vice Chair Mary Pauline Jones so that I may be heard to make the requisite motions.
Thank you. I accept the virtual gavel. I now recognize Commissioner Champness.
Thank you. I move that we have determined that each member's voice can be adequately heard by each other member of the commission. It is so moved.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. I next move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this commission to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. I further move that this commission may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by WebEx online platform or by calling 1-415-655-001 or 1-844-621-3956, toll free, and entering the access code 238-029-2429. The phone number for ADA is 711. Access of information is also available at the TAC website. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Finally, I move that all of the matters on the agenda previously furnished and posted on the TAC website are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations in the discharge of the commission's lawful purpose, duties, and responsibilities. So moved.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
circulating a petition to take away
Second.
the union's ability to make
Thank you. Is there discussion on the motion? Someone might need to mute. There we go. Sorry about, all right. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously. I now give you back the virtual gavel.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Jones. I appreciate it. We'll now move on to the business of the TAC here. We do have a full agenda this evening and a large number of guests for which we're very grateful, and a full house. So this is very good news. Very much look forward to the conversation this evening. If there are any public or guests here, I would like to welcome them. Shamali, I see you're here. You don't quite qualify as either, although you are a friend, so very glad you could make it. If there's no other public or guests, what I will do is move on to business. And thank you very much. So we move on now to the acceptance of the previous meeting's minutes. There was an exchange of the minutes here from the October meeting. Just before the meeting, I did provide some some additional edits at about 10 or so after 7. Were there any other commissioners that need to review the minutes or provide any other inputs to those minutes, perhaps?
If anyone wants to see the most recent amendment, it was Mike's email at 7:12 p.m.
Okay. I'd be prepared to entertain a motion if a commissioner so moved to approve the minutes from the October meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Kelly.
Okay, who was that? Who moved?
That
and
was
seconded?
Kelly.
Kelly moved
and Pete seconded.
and Pete seconded. Fantastic. There's a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the minutes as modified, most recent version, 7:12 p.m. From my email. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let me call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please say nay. Any
One
abstentions?
abstention, Mike, since I wasn't there.
Okay, so let's see, we've got Kevin, abstention, abstain, okay. And let's see, David, would you like to abstain as well, or? Okay, we'll put down as Kevin abstention then. So the minutes have been approved unanimously by voice vote with one abstention. So noted by Commissioner Morse. And so we move on to the agenda at hand. And we have a very fantastic agenda this evening. Now, we have talked a bit about this before. I do hope that our esteemed Deputy County Exec has been able to join us. Let's see, I don't see her name on the list here. Let me ask, Rachel, have you been able to join us yet this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I have been trying to reach her, but I have not been able to reach her yet.
Okay, appreciate it, Tom. Thank you for reaching out.
She still has 3 minutes.
That's right. We should wait for 3 minutes. She's not. We've got time. What I propose is go forward with the presentation from Fairfax County. Very substantial and good presentation there. A large group of folks there. Yes.
Did we actually vote on the minutes and I missed it?
Yes, we did. We did. I'm sorry.
How did I miss that?
We did
Okay.
a voice vote with one abstention from Kevin.
Oh,
Do we need to,
I heard there was one I guess I didn't hear the gavel or whatever. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry about it. Move on.
Okay. As long as you're comfortable with the result, we can revisit it if we need to.
Mike, if I may.
Yes.
I was able to reach Rachel just a moment ago, and she's signing on.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, okay. Well, I tell you what, maybe we just hang on for a moment here as Rachel joins us. Let me just.
Let's see what password she's lucky with.
Exactly, exactly.
WebEx.
All right. Let's see here. What I will do, I'm going to. Okay.
Do you think we lost David? Mike, I don't see him back on here.
He's in the dial-in section there. We might have lost him because I did ask him a question. David, can we do, if you're there, can we do another communications check, sir? Make sure you're still with us. Okay, we might have lost him. Okay. All right. Well, we'll check back in a little bit here. So. All right. Okay. I tell you what, let's go ahead and start the conversation with FCDOT, and I'm confident that eventually Rachel will be able to navigate her way into the system here and join us. And we can interrupt the briefing at that point when she joins us, or give the opportunity to talk after the presentation a little bit. I know, actually, I will say one thing, that the presentation that Rachel provided looked similar to the presentation she'd given the TAC, gosh, maybe about a year or so ago. And so, we have had a chance to talk to Rachel about her view of complete streets. Look forward to doing so again this evening. But one of the things I really wanted to do, and Tom, thank you for letting Greg and everybody join us here this evening. And please, when FCDOT folks, as you come in, please sort of tell us where you're from a little bit, because I've got about 6 of you or so here, and that's great news. I just want to make sure we can know who's here.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
Rachel is connected at this point.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. So, Rachel, can you hear us?
I can.
Hey, fantastic, fantastic. Well, we're just we put up some little detent stops to try and get folks from coming in. We had a little communications issues ourselves getting started. So welcome to join us here. We are to the point of getting to the complete streets part of the conversation. Was teeing up the FCDOT folks to speak. Obviously, we'll defer to you, let you open the conversation as planned. But the thing I was saying is that we'd had the good fortune to listen to about a year ago. Look forward to doing so here again. But what's important now is we want to talk about sort of what we do. And so hearing what FCDOT's plans are, some of the initial thoughts they've got, we're very much looking forward to that. But before I do, Rachel, would like to give you the floor, ask you to please go through your presentation as much as you can fit in the little bit of time there, and look forward to continuing on the conversation about complete streets.
Great. Thanks for having me, Mike and team.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, I can do.
I know you're probably wondering, why is there a picture of trees when we're talking about transportation? But I get this weekly feed from the Atlantic, and they have these beautiful photos, and some are like A++, and this one is taken in Germany. And I just thought it was so beautiful, so inspiring. So I wanted to greet you all and say happy fall.
Yes.
to remember the delight of design and beauty, whether it's nature or the designs that we create, and how they inspire us and make such a difference. And I think we all know those special places throughout Fairfax or the country or the world. And so that's your bit of autumn visual delight. So
A little beauty for the evening. Thank you.
there you go. Back to Fairfax. And so here's some more visual delight. And what I want to talk tonight about is complete streets, which is very closely linked to active transportation. And so, Pete, thanks for bringing up this subject, and Mike as the chair for setting the agenda and allowing us to talk about this. It's a really critical component of active transportation that we have included as part of our to-do list, if you will. I know there's a better word for that, but all the things we're doing with the objectives and goals include complete streets. So I know a lot of people wonder what it is. They might have an idea in their mind, but I thought, well, why don't I just explain it myself? And so you can see here 3 great examples of beautiful places in Fairfax. So on the left is the borough, which is the future, with Tyson's. This was just recently completed. I hope you've been there. And it's one of the better developments that really gets to the heart of what we've been talking about with placemaking and walkability, linking the $6 billion investment in the Silver Line, linking that to the places that adjoin it, whether you're walking, biking, or even driving, but creating a great place. So whether it's the public space that you see here, or the streets that surround it, and or the buildings, but they all come together. And then in the middle, you see Mosaic and what they did with what I call the 3-legged stool of good transportation with great street design, and the appropriate building or land uses that are associated with that, and then the economic development that results from that. And then, of course, the classic in Fairfax, which is Reston, where this was planned in the 60s, the Reston Town Center, but built in the 90s, I guess. The planning was done in the 80s, but then completed in the 90s. So why are complete streets important? I'll give you my version of it, as they result in more walking, biking, transit use, and make our streets safer and more beautiful. In a nutshell, that they're streets for all people, that is. So in Fairfax, we have a very high, what we call SOV, single occupant vehicle rate, which is 71%. This was part of the County Transit Network, CTN study that was done a few years ago. And they did a lot of research and came up with how people travel. And this number really needs to come down to about 50%, ideally. It's going to take 10, 20, 30 or more years. But at least if we can name it and quantify it, then we can have goals as to what we want, where our values are, and then decide how to get there. So we basically have 3 kinds of streets or roads in the county and throughout the country. So we have limited access highways like the Beltway, 66, 95, the toll road, and those aren't complete streets, as you can imagine. Now, interestingly, 66 will have bike lanes on it. Kudos to our DOT and VDOT who incorporated that. It wasn't cheap or easy, but they will have a bike lane as part of the 66 widening. It will be protected. So it remains to be seen how much it'll be used, but we hope it will be, because it's an unlimited access where you're not going to hit red lights. So we're hoping that'll work. But for the most part, highways are not complete streets. Arterials and collectors, sometimes they are. They're capable of being complete streets. They aren't always. But you can see here, this is Route 123 going through Tyson's, and we're looking at ways to change the nature. Local streets, most of those are complete streets. This is an image in Mosaic, but if you think of our subdivisions, people walk and bike on those streets all the time. And some of them have sidewalks or dedicated bike lanes, but even if they don't, the main streets are shared, and they work in a pretty multimodal way, if you will. So how did we get here? How did those streets design? So I'm going to give a brief history of roads and streets in 2 minutes or less over 21 years. So this was a typical road in Fairfax in the 1700s when we really started to develop. Remember George Washington and George Mason and those guys when they were here. And then through the 1800s, because we didn't have cars, we didn't have trains until the early 1800s. And the only way you got around was by foot or by horse, and we didn't have paving. So, not the kind we have today anyway. So this was pretty typical. And you could walk on this road, but most likely you took your horse or carriage. And they were really for throughput. They weren't, a city street. So if you were going from Leesburg to Alexandria, here's Route 7. Or if you were coming from Prince William up through Route 1 to Alexandria, or if you were taking 29 coming into the denser area of Fairfax, or 50. So these were our major routes. And then you have this one sort of winding its way through Fairfax, which is 123, which ended up actually in Fairfax Station, or this is actually the city of Fairfax. So those were pretty much the only major roads. Otherwise, it was cow paths and settlements with farms and forests. And then over time, we just kept filling it in, right? So here are those major streets again. They're roads, you can see them, 21, 7, 29, 50. And because we have so much land, 400 square miles, we had a lot of room. But you can see here where the grids are. So when you compare the scale, so this is Alexandria and here's DC. But Fairfax was never really planned. It just sort of happened because of these major roads, as it were, these arterials. As compared to Alexandria, it was developed in 1749, the first plan that George Washington did. And you can see it's very different than that map I just showed you, where they carefully laid out a grid like the waffle iron. Each block was about 3 acres. And then you would divide the blocks and sell them off. And it helps when you have one landowner who can lay this out and then start to plan for it. And this is where the major railroads came in over time in the 1800s from Leesburg or from Orange County, whatnot. And actually, this was one of the first canals that came through. Canals came to be in about the 1820s. Quickly, railroads overtook them about 20 years later, but that was how Alexandria formed. And one of the reasons Alexandria is where it is because the land came down to the water, so you could have a working port. And look how busy and bustling this is. Truly multimodal with the boats where you walked everywhere, took your horse or carriage, eventually trains like I mentioned. But beyond that, look at this, just farms and forests. So it was either rural countryside or developed where trade and commerce happened, right? Same thing in DC. This was developed in the designed in the late 1700s by LaFont. And then they built it starting very late 1700s into the early 1800s when John Adams was the first to live in the White House in 1801. And then you have the Capitol. So the way this grid was designed, it was unusual to have these radiating streets because they radiated from our most important government institutions, which is a really interesting way of designing a city. And where those met, you would have a roundabout or a park. So it's really a pretty neat design. And this is what it looked like. And these were complete streets, truly multimodal, where you had pedestrians were most dominant, as you can see here. And streetcars were now pretty prevalent. In the late 1700s, streetcars came around mostly because of horse-drawn, and then they became electric, which is what these are. And but you can also see there were still horses at this time. So here's a horse and a couple of horses here. Also bikes, which came to be in the late 1800s. You can see someone there. But it was this little machine here, this carriage on a combustion engine that really changed everything. But this image is so important when you think about city building and placemaking and economy and how we get around and how important the pedestrian was. And then, of course, all that changed. Here we are, 100 years later, and the car became king or queen, and land uses changed as a result. They weren't mixed use anymore. Pedestrians, it really wasn't a thing with suburbia. And we changed how we designed roads and how we traveled. And so in just that short amount of time, within 100 years, or even less, within 50 years, this is how quickly it all changed. When you think about 7,000 years of city building and planning and how we traveled, in just 50 years of America changed so fast. And this was one of the results. So this would have been a 2-lane country road that we talked about earlier, Route 123. And now it's about a 9-10 lane arterial that goes through Tyson's. And it has assets, it's really good for car throughput. But for placemaking, there are challenges, and it's not yet a complete street. It has it has a sidewalk here, but it needs a lot of work. So these are some of the things we're working on in the county. And this was if you think back to the Alexandria plan with the grid of streets, about each is about three acres per block. This is a very different scale. So here's the Beltway. This is the Dulles Airport Access Road, which then came down here to the future 66. 123 became an arterial, but all of Old Town would fit right about here. So with the automobile, you can go much faster. So scale changes with speed and how we travel. And then, of course, the types of roads with the Beltway, where we started with 4 lanes, hard to believe. And within 10 years, we quickly realized that wasn't enough. And I'll talk about that a little later, about how quickly that came upon us. But with an unforeseen result was traffic, which we had never, it wasn't in our thinking when these limited access highways and arterials and whatnot were designed, because we had never had traffic before, because the automobile had never been around or prolific. And so a new kind of problem happened, and that's what we've been learning about ever since. So originally, this was a great book written by a UVA professor named Peter Norton, and he talks about the street and how the street really shifted in terms of who was it for. So here's a street in New York City, and they were really, they really served all purposes and people. So it was a marketplace, as you can see here. It was a playground. So you think about little kids just running around, and everyone, is watching each other's kids. You could also get through, but it really was for socializing, gathering place, and all the other things I mentioned. So it was a very different kind of place, but the key was that the pedestrian was the top priority. It was really for him or her. And I just wanted to show you this quick film about, and I think you've seen this before, but let me just fast forward. And you can see here how pedestrians would just cross the street wherever they wanted. And they were not told where they had to cross, how they had to cross. And it all had to do with speed, because with the automobile came danger. And so you can see this car here just crossing wherever it wanted. There's no lights. The streetcar is crossing right in front of pedestrians. Here comes another horse and carriage. The cop isn't, he doesn't care who goes anywhere. Point being that everyone on the street, if you were a pedestrian, you just ran across, walked across, did what you want. A cyclist did the same, streetcar. And it was because of speed. And so they had to do something about that as cars got faster, because the original cars only went about 15, 20 miles an hour. So they created a term called jaywalker. So a jay was like an unsophisticated person, was a term used back then. And they said, only if you're unsophisticated do you just cross the street wherever. But the sophisticated person walks where they're told in a crosswalk, and the car gets the highest priority. And you could see kids were getting killed at an alarming rate, and this had to be dealt with. So here's an image from Richmond, Virginia. I worked there about 10 years ago, and I saw this photo in a restaurant and wondered where it was, and explored through, you know, looking at certain buildings that are still there. And this is a complete street. So you've got the streetcar, people just walk out and get it in the middle of the street. There's no station, there's no special protection. You just went out. And again, because cars were still reasonably, they had reasonable speeds at that time. And of course it was mixed use. Everyone came in from the surrounding neighborhoods, either walked there, took the streetcar. Maybe they had bikes, we don't see in this photo, but a real complete street. So fast forward 100 years. So this is the same exact location. You can tell because that building is the same building. And what happened was the car became the dominant mode of transportation. Everyone thought it would be great. And who didn't? It's such a wonderful machine. It's so convenient. You have your own living room. You can control the temperature, pick your own music. I mean, who doesn't like a car, right? But then it needed space. Cars take enormous amounts of space. So they had to take buildings out and put parking lots in their stead. They pulled up the streetcar because streetcar was privately owned and they couldn't compete with the automobile. But one thing you notice, there's no pedestrians and there's no cyclists and multimodal transit. So these are the things we gave up as a result. And one of the main reasons is we went out to suburbia and what we call Euclidean zoning, where land uses were divided by type. So you lived one place, you shopped in another place, the shopping center, you worked in an office park, whereas before it was all mixed up, like you saw in that image of Richmond. And we still had some vestiges of, this is downtown DC, about the 1930s, 40s. So people were still mostly working downtown and shopping downtown, and they were starting to buy houses out in suburbia. Land was cheap and plentiful. The federal government was paying for highways so we could get out there. And what was the problem with that? I mean, we really didn't see a downside because we'd never done it, right? Streetcars are still operating, but over time, of course, if you're going to live out there, you're going to want to shop out there and work out there. So one of the first major shopping centers is 1956 when Seven Corners got built. And this was a farm, one owner, apparently it was an African-American family that owned this and ended up selling it. So you have apartment buildings here, which are still there, and this shopping center that was shiny and new and really attractive. Everyone wanted to go there and shop because, of course, this was new and bold. And you can see here the two major arterials that, remember, Leesburg Pike, Route 7 that we were talking about, and Route 50. And these two-lane country roads now had to really expand because of the auto use and domination. So here you can see it was actually a kind of roundabout that you came to, but over time that had to change to make it more efficient for car throughput, not about placemaking, but getting through. So they put Route 7 in a kind of ditch, if you will. They buried that and then had the other streets, Route 50, Wilson Boulevard, and others, to make the Seven Corners. And of course, this was the result. But now what we're looking at, this is one of our CRDs, Community Revite Districts. And one of the key issues here is how do we treat the street? Are these complete streets? Nope. Can they be? We hope so. It'll take some doing. We're not going to recreate these overnight. It'll take 10, 20, 30 more years. But if we start thinking about them as what they could truly be for all people, not just the pedestrian who has no choice and has to walk across here. There is a sidewalk, but it's not a nice experience. It's not a place of beauty. It doesn't feel right. You only do it because you have to. And so that's what we want to change. And think about the capacity of streets. Think about Route 7. It's really about this. But streets really are for all people and activities and buildings. And that's what a complete street is. So one of the things driving how we design our streets today is level of service, or LOS. And it was created by engineers who were very well-meaning, and probably in the 50s. And so VDOT owns our roads. And so this is the methodology they use. We are now working with them to see if there's a better way to do this. So LOS A is less than 10 seconds that you wait at a traffic light, or up to more than 80 seconds. So less than 10 seconds, you get an A. F is more than 80 seconds. And again, they meant well, but what did we sacrifice? We do all these studies. We spend thousands and thousands of dollars, millions really, throughout the country to measure this. How many cars are going to be there? Are they going to turn right or left? And then we add up all kinds of different data, and then decide, okay, here's how many lanes we need as a result. But what gets left out is, where's the pedestrian in this? Yes, we might have a sidewalk for them, but it's more of an afterthought. And so now we're shifting our thinking, and I think our DOT is at the forefront of this, and we're working with VDOT to say, okay, how do we think about this holistically? Like, what is the purpose of a street? Who's it for? How do we use it? And then what are the land uses and economic activity that are going to result? So it's the chicken or the egg. Do we just say, okay, here's how we think cars will move, and then we design accordingly? Or do we say, what kind of street do we want, and design it that way for all people, and then let the rest come into place? So this is what I think a lot of people want. I don't think anybody would say, we do not want this kind of street with its beauty, with it feels comfortable, people feel safe, that they can walk here without fear of vehicle speed. Cyclists can do the same, cycle along a road where there are cars, but the speed is appropriate, where they feel okay. There's a certain amount of space, and it all gets shared amongst every type of traveler. And that's the kind of thing that the Tyson's plan envisions. This is an image from that plan, and you can see here where pedestrians are important, transit's important, and then the strong relationship between the street design and the buildings that come to be. So again, what our values are determines, I think, how we design our streets. So you look at the one on the left, and that's Old Town, and I don't think anybody would be critical of Old Town, how it's designed, how it feels, how it functions, it's successful. The one on the right is Route 29, and it's fine, for suburbia, but for LOS, this would get an F, because you're probably waiting more than 80 seconds at the light. This would get an A, but look at all that capacity. I mean, that's a lot of room, and you don't see a lot of cars. Now, this isn't during rush hour when the photo was taken, but even so, somebody had to pay for that, and there's not much economic activity. So, but with an economic lens, complete streets lens, this would be the A, and this would be the F. So that's what we're trying to shift. How do we bring in other values and factors as we design our streets, and who matters and what matters? And what we're finding is the LRS methodology is actually creating more traffic, because when you fill it, once you widen it, it gets filled up again because people change their behavior. So if there's terrible traffic, people will use transit, they'll carpool, they're coming a little later, a little earlier. And now with what COVID's done with telework, that's really having an impact. But we basically can't widen our way out of it. So how do we think smarter? And one of the reasons we know this is that we've widened and widened and widened, and what is happening is people are driving more. So what we call the BMT. So people, 25 years ago were, the average was 21 miles a day, and now it's 25. So that's the inducing of traffic. And a big part of that, again, is how we're designing this. So this is a traditional grid, but complete streets, as I would call them. And then this is a suburban model where we're forced to rather than the grid where you can everyone can reach this main street with the subdivision or suburban model. You have to there's like one point where you come out, so that forces a lot of traffic on certain parts of a much larger grid, and that's where we're getting the gridlock and why it's not working. And so we have to rethink what it's doing to our health. And we believe through a complete streets approach and rethinking LOS to what we call VMT reduction, or vehicle miles traveled reduction, that call me in the morning and you will be better. You will be healthier. So this, in case you're wondering, this is not a complete street. This is a result of LOS. And anybody who can find a pedestrian gets a prize. So that's where the pedestrian is. And again, back to values, who do we value? And this is a bit like what we're trying to do on Route 1, is to rethink Route 1 and to give everyone priority and to say how you want to travel matters to us. We know that auto-related deaths are very high. Actually, it's gone up recently. It's higher than 40,000 a year. In Fairfax, we have about 15 pedestrians who die a year, and it's about double that for people who die in accidents, 30, 35 a year. So here's some examples. This is not a complete street, right? You don't see the sidewalks on both sides, the bike lanes. This will change when we redo Route 1 with Embark, but it's extremely wide, high speed, and also not a great gateway into our county. And so, and our crosswalks are way too far apart. And so what happens is people, they jaywalk as a result. So a woman was killed here a year ago, Ms. Alston, who decided to jaywalk one night. You could see they had put up a barrier here, but the point where the barrier stopped, that's where she decided to cross. This woman, Ms. Asante, she apparently worked at Krispy Kreme, was walking up here, we think she was going to Walmart, and decided to jaywalk. And then Mr. Yaboa, he was at the shelter, we believe, Kennedy Shelter, went across. There's a deli here, and he didn't want to walk up here and cross. So, and as you can see, this is quite a wide road and therefore high speed. And the two are a bad combination. And all these people were people of color, which is interesting. And it's not okay. We need more humane streets that are complete for all people. And we're forcing folks to travel in a certain way, many who don't have an option. And we know we can do better. This is very much on our minds, our DOT and BDOT. And so we're all putting our heads together to try and figure this out. Part of it, again, is how far apart the crosswalks are and what it's doing for folks. Again, people of color, lower income folks, older people are most affected by this. So by lowering the speed, one of the best things you can do to ensure people are safer is to reduce that speed. So studies have shown that there's a 10% chance of death at 20 miles per hour, but it goes up to about 90% at 40 miles an hour. And 40 miles for a suburban road isn't that fast, really. But when you have pedestrians, it's deadly. And we are looking at places like Route 1 that we're studying right now to reduce it from 45 to 35. And just that small increment will allow us to design the street differently. There are different design standards where we can have smaller radii, where we can have less lanes, all this kind of stuff. So we are working on that. And here's an example. You'll notice when you go into Old Town on Route 1, same Route 1 that I showed you before where that pedestrian death happened. This has about the same number of vehicles, about 40 or 50,000 a day, but look how it feels different. It really is a complete street. Now, it doesn't have bike lanes, but it's got all the other components. But the key is people are traveling much slower. And that makes all the difference, because when vehicles are slower, pedestrians and cyclists come out and they start to use the street more. Here's another one of my favorite arterials in the DC area, Connecticut Avenue. And it's only 6 lanes, not 8, 10, 12. And it's a major arterial from suburban Maryland into DC. And so certain things they've done. So less lanes, only 6. On-street parking, which tends to slow the through traffic because people are getting in and out of their cars. You have street trees, which kind of subconsciously affect how you think of a place and how you pay attention to your environment. In fact, VDOT doesn't allow street trees in certain roads, and we're starting to work with them. We have a pilot on Route 7 by West Falls Church where we're putting in street trees. And our DOT was able to get street trees along Route 1 for that the portion that we're widening for the BRT, and mixed use development. So then the land uses follow because the street's designed in the right way, and it induces ped and bike travel, which then affects the economy. And streets can be great civic spaces, particularly complete streets or bridges. Public art, as you see here, great architecture, elements like wonderful street lights that are beautifully designed, widths that are appropriate so that multiple people can pass each other, whether they're cyclists or pedestrians. And it really sends a message to people that we care about you, your environment. We believe that aesthetics matter and the quality of life is affected by how a place looks and feels, and there's a calming effect and real civility from beautiful design, as opposed to this, where you would not call this a great civic space. Now, is it good for car throughput? Yeah, but our streets have to be so much more than just focused on car throughput. They need to be complete, and they need to be for all people. And so this, in my view, this is too wide. We're inducing more automobile use by making it 9 lanes, or let's see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 9 lanes. And can we take, some of the dedicated rights or the double lefts, what have you, even some of the through lanes, give it back to others. So rather than have this, maybe we carry this out and make it straight and make the pedestrian experience better. So now you'll have room for street trees, or we can add the bike lanes we really need. It will slow the speed. It will make the place feel better. This whole side's going to be developed. JBG is the main developer. On this side, you have Comstock. In fact, we just had a great meeting today, 4-hour meeting to talk about how this street should be designed for all people to really make it our main street. But Wheelie could also be a main street. And so John Carter, our planning commissioner for Hunter Mill, put this in the motion when Kathy Hudgens was still the board member for this area, and it was being a piece of land on the south side, so about 3 blocks away from here, for Campus Commons was being done. And John said, we really need to rethink Wheelie. So our staff in DOT is going to start looking at that, and we hope that you will be a part of that. We'd be glad to bring our findings and where we are, and particularly I know Kelly is the representative on TAC for Hunter Mill. So I hope this can be a great pilot for us to really think about what is a complete street, how would it affect all people who live here, work here, visit here, and what the future growth is going to be, so that we induce pedestrian and cycle and transit travel rather than just automobile travel. We'll always have the automobile travel. It's just a question of how much and who gets the highest priorities. So in wrapping this up, we can create complete streets that are great places that induce more ped cycle transit travel and spur economic activity. So how? So we need to replace LOS with, or at least have other options that result in VMT reduction. And so Tom's deputy, Greg Steverson, is working on this. He's put together a group. They've been meeting for about a year with VDOT folks and also with our planning staff as well, because land use is so critical with placemaking, and they are looking at alternatives. They brought in a firm called Fair and Pierce who did this in California. So LOS is now not allowed in California in terms of what they call CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, which almost all projects are required to apply. And they said it just doesn't measure holistically how you look at a street. It looks at just automobile traffic and how long you waited at a red light. It doesn't look at how everybody travels. So they've spent a lot of time and effort really studying this. So I hope perhaps they could make a presentation to you when they come up with their recommendations, which will be early next year. So the other things we do is we slow the speed. We really, in an urban area, like I just showed you, shouldn't be more than 25. Route 1, 35, because we have, probably a third of the traffic is throughput, if not half. No more than 6 through lanes. After that, you're really inducing high speeds. On-street parking, it also helps businesses and calms traffic. We should have crosswalks every 300 to 500 feet because that prevents jaywalking and also just humanizes the place. So it's not like a highway, but more like a place. Really good sidewalks and bike lanes that have the appropriate widths, that have the right features with them. And bike lanes as well. Shade trees, like I talked about before. And it's hot here in the summer, so shade trees can really make the difference as to whether someone will decide to walk or hop in their car and turn on their AC. And then, of course, how you place your buildings in proximity. If it's auto-oriented, you typically get the parking lot like a Walmart. If it's pedestrian and bike-focused, buildings tend to come closer to the street because you don't need the parking lot as much. And so complete streets are becoming the norm now. So United States Department of Transportation has complete streets policies. The MWCOG has complete streets policy. And I believe they also have some funding available. They have a boilerplate that localities can use. Smart Growth America also has a subset called the National Complete Streets Coalition. A lot of interesting information there. And then as an example, Alexandria just did a complete streets guidelines, which was completed about 3 years ago. So we have good models to go by. This is becoming more and more common. People are realizing for the environment how important it is, for our health how important it is. Not just health because of injuries and deaths, but also just walking and what that does for our health. Active Fairfax is now underway, as you all know. I hope you're getting those regular updates. Nicole Wynand is heading up that effort with her colleagues, Lauren Delmar and Chris Wells and Mike Garino and Eric Titleman. And so it's a really robust effort. We're going into phase 2. I hope you'll really stay involved because this is so important. It could be a real game changer for Fairfax. And it includes a complete streets component where we're educating the public on what complete streets are and how it can then be a part of the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan. So I will leave you with this image and a smiley face to show you what we can create over time. We're already doing this in many areas, whether it's Reston or Mosaic, Fairfax Corner. We have good examples, but we can do this in many places, and we're well on our way. So thanks for listening, and happy to take any questions you might have.
Yes, thank you very much, Rachel. Appreciate it. Do want to open up for a couple questions. We'll squeeze the back half of the agenda a little bit to allow more time for this conversation, both Rachel's and the FCDOT. So, does any commissioners have any questions I'd like to ask Rachel?
I have a few comments, questions. Rachel, I don't know if you had a chance to catch it on the local news channel 4, actually. At 6 tonight there's a place in Tyson's called the Perch, and they were hoisting up a London double-decker bus and another bus from the 30s or 40s, and they're going to be on the top of this building, or I think it's maybe near Capital One, and they're going to make the buses food trucks. So that looked pretty interesting.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for,
Um,
Kevin. Yeah, that's in the Performing Arts Building, I believe.
I was just there last Friday. I'm looking forward to going back again.
Oh, that's
So,
great. Beautiful building.
Couple other things. I was just of note, and I missed last month's meeting because I was in Boston for a wedding, and I found it interesting that abiding by red lights up there seemed to be optional, but they were very, very cognizant of pedestrians. I never felt unsafe crossing the streets there. They all stopped without any hesitation at all. So I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
And then two other things. One, I wanted to ask you how you one concern that I've voiced a number of times is with these interim models of bike lanes where they have to share the street, and when you get to an intersection, it just seems to me like no man's land. The driver, I feel unsure making the right turn. I can't imagine how the bicyclist would feel approaching it if he sees a car. Hopefully, I guess he would probably yield, not wanting to challenge the automobile. But how you think that's working, how you feel about that. And the last question was, I was not aware that VDOT had a policy against trees on streets, and I wonder if you knew where that came from.
Well, the last question, I think it has to do with because of the higher speeds on arterials and many collectors is the risk if a car hits a tree. And so they want to avoid that, which is why we want to address speed and why we're looking at, for Route 1, and Tom could speak to that and how he was able to get VDOT to shift their thinking, because at the time he got that approved, it was 45 miles an hour. We're pretty sure it'll go down to 35, so it should be okay. But it's that is the thinking. Although, you see in many of these rights of way, utility poles or even traffic light poles, that if a car hit them, it would be just as deadly as a tree. So that's why we thought we'd start with this pilot and show that, we think it's going to be okay. It has other effects, by inducing more ped use and actually slowing the speed because people pay attention to their environment. It's more calming. But again, that's where it comes from, but it's also why we're trying to shift it. In terms of the bike lanes, yes, so cyclists have the right to travel, and again, Tom can speak to this, or his staff, to travel in a vehicle lane when there's not a designated bike lane. I'm not saying the Beltway, but I believe on most roads they have that right. So we're in a transition period, right? We were never a cyclist town, but we want to encourage more of that and get more people out of their cars and give people options who want to cycle. So where we don't have the bike lanes, they have the right to be there. And I think it's a learning curve. There's education, publicity they're getting out there. And I think the key is, if you're not sure what to do, slow down. If we go slow, everyone's safe, right? And then we wait for cues. I don't know if cyclists, so what we have are, I forget the term, I always have to ask Tom to remind me. So when you're crossing the street and you see the crosswalk signal go, so what they're doing is they're allowing that to happen first. Then the
pedestrian indicator.
I'm sorry, what?
Leading pedestrian indicator.
Oh,
they have it in DC.
Oh, thank you so much. Lead ped indicator. So the pedestrian can start to cross the road, and you see a lot of these in DC, Alexandria, Arlington. And then by the time they're in the crosswalk, the car can see them. So then they wait before they turn. And then same thing that a cyclist can do. So they get that lead time. Now, if they're in the vehicle lane, they can't do that, but a cyclist can go over to where the crosswalk is. So those are some things. Oh, they can't?
Actually, in DC, if the cyclist is in the lane, they can go when the pedestrian goes.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Yeah. Even better news. Thanks, Kelly.
Mhm.
So these are some of the things, but we are in transition, and that's why this active Fairfax plan is so important. First of all, to redesign our streets, to educate, and to get people just thinking differently in how we travel. But nothing else you remember tonight from what I said is slow the speed of vehicles. I'm not talking about the Beltway, limited access, but please just slow the speeds. You will do a lot to make our places more bike and ped friendly and transit friendly. The more people want to walk and or bike, the more they're likely, I think, the more they're likely to use transit.
One quick final thought. We'll have to get on your calendar in Burke Center where the next couple of months there'll be a new trail connecting the BRE to one of the neighborhoods. And if you haven't seen any of the trail network in Burke Center around the BRE, it'd be a good opportunity for you.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
But if it's snowing or raining, I'm not showing up.
Okay, fair enough.
Wimp.
There we go. With that, Kelly, you just called to you.
Haven't you ever heard of freezing saddles? Anyway, I do have a couple points. Rachel, thank you so much. I've seen this this presentation a couple times, and each time it gets better because each time it makes me think a little bit harder to find out, to figure out questions to pose. One thing I wanted to encourage Fairfax County DOT and everybody connected with this is to be bold, be more bold than you're being. And especially when you're working with developers, because Mosaic and Reston Town Center are close, but they're still not very bike friendly. And one big point on that, at both locations is the bike parking that everyone directs you to is away from where you want to be. If you're at a restaurant, you want to see that bike. If you're at a grocery store or Target, you want to come out and load up your bike. You don't want your bike in a garage where you can't see what's happening.
Oh.
And so, that's just one of those areas where that street furniture needs to be so integrated that they don't even think about it. They just do it. So I would encourage that in both those locations to look at those again for bike parking, street furniture.
And if you could, keep us, hold us to it, Kelly, by making sure we get that in the active transportation plan.
Okay.
It probably is, because Nicole thinks of these things all the time, and Tom's also an avid cyclist, so there's probably something in there, but make sure we're very clear about it and that it's a prominent issue, because I've heard that from other cyclists too.
And I would say that, like a Mosaic on Strawberry Lane, between District and Yates, which goes right in front of Angelica Theater there, that should just be closed off to cars. Just close it off.
It has been, yeah. They just opened it recently, but during COVID, they closed it for a year.
Yeah, right. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So just leave it closed. In Europe, they have this thing called Fußgängerstraße, which is literally a walking place. And everybody knows it goes back to those photos, except we don't have horse poop, the complete streets of the 1880s. And people are congregating and they're making their community come alive. And, so like I say, just be bold and we'll back you up. I do agree that speed is the key. And unfortunately, enforcement is a part of that, which is very unpopular right now. But if you can't completely design that solution, you have to have people feeling that there's a consequence to them choosing to go 50 on a 35. And I don't know if Shamley's still on the call, but the area on Glade Drive in Reston, where we've been monitoring the speeds, it's well in excess of the speed limit, and it's almost all local people. And you can only redesign infrastructure so much. You also have to get people's attitudes. And unfortunately, as my children learned when they were young, sometimes attitude enforcement involves a little bit of suffering. So, and then, my last thing is education. If we're going to encourage people to use bike lanes and we're going to encourage people to use LPIs, and we're going to encourage people to use that brand new gorgeous crosswalk with the pedestrian refuge in the middle. We need to teach them how to use it, and we need to teach the people who are driving around them how to give the quarter that's due. And so I really think it needs to be a part of FCDOT's budget to do education that's more than bus wraps and sending out mailers. And I think there needs to be hands-on active education. And if they can't do it in-house, there needs to be money to allow them to contract to do it with an organization such as FAB or somebody else. I mean, whoever's available that is competent to do it. We've got to teach people that this is not, the 70s with the cars anymore. So be bold, stand up for what you believe you should get as a cyclist or as a pedestrian, and encourage the developers to think outside the box as well, because it actually will accrue to them in terms of theirs is the property that's going to get full first. And a good example of that is on Sunrise Valley, the development. It's now called the Russell. Started out as the Lincoln, now it's the Russell. They have a beautiful multi-use path that goes right in front of them. It separates out for pedestrians and for cyclists, and it has bike tools and a little doggy park and swings. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's just this one block, but I would rent there before I would rent somewhere else.
Good to know. Yeah, that's what we're hearing. Yeah, thanks for that feedback.
So I'm done.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. Do want to move on a bit, but do want to give commissioners another opportunity. Is there any other questions we'd like to raise right now? And Rachel, of course, I presume you're going to stay for the FCDOT presentation. We hope so we can have a little bit of discussion at the end as well.
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Can we? If not,
can I just?
Yes, of course, Tom.
Very quickly. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. I'll just continue to advocate too for around our metro communities. I know, like within the West, I'm near the West Falls Church in Providence, but it's great what we're doing around Route 7, but that doesn't extend into a lot of the communities. I know there's an active Fairfax or an active transportation plan, but that is still very limited. And what we can, if residents can't walk within their own communities because we're building in urban and more dense areas, and we are very limited into solving some of the speed issues within our own streets. It's going to be a big challenge of getting people out. We can get across Route 7, but we can't walk down our own neighborhoods. We had an issue where a Chestnut Street, which is just right off Route 7 by West Falls Church area, a speed hump was vetoed because there was only one place that we can put it, and a community decided not to support it. And so it's very challenging to try to solve some of these issues within our own communities and try to slow down traffic.
Yeah. And that's why I really think street design really matters. Yeah. So we're working on it. In fact, we're putting together the board members. So Palchik and Faust are putting together a task force to follow up on the West Falls Church comp plan amendment rezoning to address exactly what you're talking about, Jeremy, to look at the neighborhoods, because you're right, if those aren't designed right and the links from those to West Falls Church, you're not going to get that pedestrian activity. So someone's going to hop in their car to go to Giant rather than walk over when they're only even 2 or 3 blocks away. So that's being formed now. You might want to talk to Supervisor Palchik about that. If you're interested or somebody who would be good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate that. And Rachel, I appreciate you mentioning that to me as well previously. So thank you for reminding us here.
Sure.
I would like to move on to the FCDOT presentation, please. Again, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Commissioners. Some good questions, good discussion here. And so, Tom, I'll give you the opportunity to do the introduction if you choose, or to defer to one of your colleagues if you prefer.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I'm going to refer to Greg Fuller, who's in our Site Analysis and Transportation Planning Division, and he and Mark Dreyfus are going to walk through the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everyone, members of the commission and other attendees. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight about complete streets. As Tom mentioned, Greg Fuller with Site Analysis. We're joined by other staff on our team, Zach Larnard, Mark Dreyfus, Nina Olmott, and Jeff Herman. And in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to Zach Larnard, who is one in our staff who's been leading the charge and making very great progress in helping to actively implement these complete streets concepts and efforts throughout the county. And where we have work to do, he's making great progress with our partners in being able to continue to implement them in other areas throughout the county. So we have a presentation for you and an opportunity to answer any questions and discuss afterwards. So Zach, take it away.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Rachel, for the presentation and the discussion. I think it was very helpful to see some of these things in graphics. I think that really helped get the point across. Let me share my screen, and I will share a quick presentation on. I'm going to skip a few slides because I think Rachel did a good job on presenting what complete streets are and why they're important to the county and why we want to implement them as many places as we can. So as we said, complete streets are for everyone. That's what we want to get to. We want to make sure that they provide space for all different users shown here. And also as was shown in the previous presentation, that they really do have multiple benefits. And that's really what we want to have everyone in the county be able to share in those benefits and share in the success of the county. So let me go into more of the technical pieces, I guess, of how we implement some of these things. So what goes into a complete streets policy? There are different things that we have in place currently that we think help gets us to the point of implementing complete streets. We have the comprehensive plan, the policy plans, guidance, guidelines, standards, policies, initiatives, and community engagement. So the main thing we have is in the comprehensive plan, it outlines the importance of balancing land uses and supporting infrastructure and encourages growth around the transportation systems that we have in place to move people and goods as efficiently and quickly as possible while minimizing any disruption or environmental impacts. And we also want to make sure that we concentrate that development in current already existing activity centers and make sure that there's sidewalks, trails, bikes, everything for people to choose how they want to get there. It's not just in the car. They want to be able to make choices as to how they get places. The transportation policy plan is part of the comprehensive plan, and that really goes into more detail about the objectives and goals that are in the comp plan as to how we get to complete streets. And it is providing multimodal systems, more choices, reduce single occupancy vehicles, and ensure that people can get where they're going safely, and get to what they need by making different choices and not just taking their car. So some other things that we have is Fairfax County has several different pillars in place right now that are helping us to implement these complete streets. So I'm going to go through these a bit quickly here. So one of the main things that we've been working on, and this is where I've been pretty active in shepherding these plans through the approval process with VDOT and with Virginia Department of Transportation and with Department of Rail and Public Transit, that's DRPT, is to get these multimodal system plans approved. And what that does is it sets up an area that allows us and developers within that area to use Appendix B2 of the VDOT Road Design Manual. And that allows for the developers to be a bit more flexible in how they design the roads and how they can make the area more urban, give it a more urban feel and not just another highway. So as it said on the previous slide, that's a two-step process. So the first step is getting the boundary of the district established. And then we create what we're calling the urban street standards. And that's where we come up with different cross sections that fit different roads within that area based on the roadway classifications and the modal emphasis of those areas. And so far we've done that in Tyson's, and we've got all the ones in Reston approved. So that's Reston Town Center around that metro station, Wheelie, Reston East, and Herndon. Innovation is currently in process. We've got phase 1 approved, and we're working on phase 2 now. And then Richmond Highway is our next stop. And I'd also like to point out that so far, these standards first came out in 2013. They're updated in 2020, and Fairfax County is the only jurisdiction in the Commonwealth which has submitted or approved any of these, has gotten any of these approved. So I think VDOT said the city of Roanoke was going to try, but so far we're the only ones that have crossed this hurdle to get these approved. So a few other things that go into.
Quick question, Zach. Just regarding
Yes.
the Wheelie Reston East TSA, does that include where the demonstration is that Rachel was talking about earlier? Is that that same location, or is that separate? The Wheelie Road activity that Rachel talked about.
Let's see.
I'm not sure of the exact place where the demonstration was, but it is everything that's in the transit station area as depicted in the comprehensive plan.
It's smack dab in the middle of it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't include, when I talked about the street trees on Route 7, that's a pilot, as it were. We're not affecting the street itself, but that's in West Falls Church. So I'm just looking at the list here. So that's not there, but yeah, the Richmond Highway Corridor, Wheelie. And then also, Tom, don't we have McLean? Aren't we looking at doing a pilot in McLean?
We are looking at a pilot in McLean, but we're going to do that without having the urban street standards.
Okay, all right.
Where in McLean are you looking to do the pilot?
On Old Dominion and
Cambridge.
Okay.
Yeah, it came up.
Look at the downtown somewhere that kills us.
Yeah, because they, exactly. Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I'll say a few other things that are part of our pillars to get the complete streets implemented in the county is the countywide transportation network study. And this looks farther into the future, and it looks at what are the types of transit systems needed to accommodate the types of growth that we want to have in the county. And these are high quality transit corridors, and a lot of these recommendations are more on the heavy rail, light rail, metro BRT. And then to complement that, we also do have the transit development plan, which is a 10-year look in the future for expansion and enhancing of bus service with the Fairfax connector in the county. And this also makes recommendations on routes, frequency, technology used on the bus, the amenities at the stations, facilities, all these types of things, and how to get those routes to the activity centers and to the existing rail stations and other transit. And then so this is all work that we've done in FCDOT, and then working with Department of Planning and Zoning. They have the urban centers and community revitalization sections, and these two groups look at the streetscapes, streets, parks, landscaping, street furniture, exteriors, building exterior placemaking, lighting, facilities, all those things that may or may not be in the right of way, but they definitely do add to the feel of a street. So those are also very important things that were discussed earlier about where to put those bike racks, things like that. These are some of the guidelines that these groups help us create, and then those go into some of the cross sections that we create when we develop the urban street standards. And then also, as was mentioned before, the active transportation plan that is in process, and that is working to bring together two separate plans now that we have, the bike master plan and the trails plan. We want to bring those together and look at how the trails are both used as recreation, but also used as transportation corridors. So those are important things that plan is going to be looking at. And the county has a One Fairfax policy, which is committed to promoting fairness and justice in the form of public policy. And this is something that Complete Streets is a part of that. And it's important to look at how transportation affects the health of the people that use it and the people that live near it. So that goes into our thinking when we implement the Complete Streets. Additionally, similar to that is a health in all policies. And this is something where it's important to understand the impacts of our projects and to understand not just the impacts to the people that use them, but also to the areas where they're being built. And I think Complete Streets here is a great example of bringing together health and transportation priorities into projects. And these are things that people really do, people really see the impacts of these because they're things that they can see the street being built and the trails and the sidewalks, and then they can use them and it can have really a positive and quick impact. And also the Complete Streets and the strategic plan. The Board of Supervisors recently did adopt an update to the strategic plan. And that did include Complete Streets as an important metric for assessing the mobility and transportation throughout the county. So as we continue here, where are we and what are we doing? Where are we going? So what's next? Fairfax County we have all these supporting pillars in place with the intention to unify them as one comprehensive Complete Streets policy. And our hope is to get this the Complete Streets policy as part of the updated transportation policy plan so that we can have all these things in, as part of one policy when we update that transportation policy plan. And for the next steps in Complete Streets, we are going to continue with getting innovation approved, the innovation transit station area. And then, as I said, we're going to move on to Richmond Highway, and that's going to be slightly different because we're going to try to address that as a continual corridor rather than the others were just individual transit station areas. So that's something we'll be working with VDOT and DRPT on. And continue work on the active Fairfax plan. And then finally, I'm not sure what the timing on the transportation policy plan is, but that is something that we will be working toward completing. And then we really do want to bring all these things together for one county policy for Complete Streets. So thank you, everyone. And I will open it up to questions that I or any of my colleagues from DOT can answer. So thank you.
Thank you, Zach. This is Greg Fuller. An important point to reiterate, the pillars that Zach walked through, all of these are in place, are currently mechanisms that we can use to impact and affect development in a positive way, or in the case of the active transportation plan, is something that exists now and is being refined. So when we think of wanting to implement Complete Streets or thoughtful streets or designs that are considered of those outside of the automobile, we have those mechanisms in place now, and we are doing that. Rachel's presentation, as well as Zach's, showed some examples of where we've been successful in implementing that. So just to remind everybody that these are things we can actively and are actively doing now, absent of it being titled under official policy. The policy would just be inclusive of all of these things that we have in place now. So we're making great progress and doing great work, and we look forward to continuing that.
Fantastic, fantastic. Absolutely want to love the presentation. Definitely have some thoughts come to mind, but do want to allow commissioners to ask some questions. Commissioners, any questions you'd like to open up with here for Zach and for Greg and others?
I have a question.
Yes, Roger.
I've heard this. The one thing that seems to be absent, and I wondered if you thought about it and what to do. What is you're going to have street programs. What are you going to do about parking? I haven't heard anything about it. if you're going to move people out of automobiles and to alternative forms of transportation and transit, you're going to have to do something about the parking situation that we have that encourages the use of automobiles, particularly in shopping centers. Ryan, we've got acres of asphalt that do nothing but store cars. Do you have you considered or thought about or company plan for dealing with parking? I can make a couple of suggestions. Number one, get rid of free on-street parking, except perhaps in residential neighborhoods. Two, get rid of the requirement that there be so many parking spaces per square foot of retail space. Just eliminate it. I can go into the Seven Corners Shopping Center any time of the day, no matter how crowded it is, and I can find unused parking places. It's expensive. And it also includes overuse of automobiles. Do you have a parking policy? Have you considered a parking policy?
So,
As part of this.
Roger, this is Tom Bashadny.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer is yes. And there are several parking initiatives underway, and we can bring those and brief you in more detail. But there's several pieces to that. First of all, in the Tyson's comprehensive plan, instead of putting in parking minimums, it includes parking maximums, so that developers have a limit to how much parking they can provide. In addition to that, we're in the middle of a study right now to implement on-street parking policies in Tyson's and in Reston that will actually start charging for that on-street parking. And there is also an effort underway that our Land Development Services Department is undertaking that is looking at those parking minimums, as you mentioned, and whether or not those are the right numbers for 2021. Many of them have been in place for some time, and it's time to evaluate them, and they have an ongoing study to look at those. So there is a lot going on in parking, and at some point, if the chair would like, we can kind of package that up and bring that to a future TAC meeting.
I would be delighted to see that. I think that I'm glad you're doing that, and I think we ought to take, as the commission, we ought to take a closer look at that, at what you're doing, at offering a critique that we could have. But glad to see you're doing that. That could make a difference whether this succeeds or fails, I think.
I would also note that in a lot of the redevelopment that's going on, they are taking advantage of those sea of parking and putting in buildings and making these areas more urban. Because the parking lots exist, it opens up some possibilities for more urban development. So you're seeing that in multiple places in the county.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and interestingly, because Fairfax in many ways is, quote, built out, because we've created such huge parking lots, those are our new development opportunities, redevelopment, infill development. So the irony of creating all this parking is that now we have new opportunities for new dense development. I mean, when you think about Mosaic, it was, a big movie theater and a parking lot, and, some open space, gravel lots, whatever. But and Fair Oaks Mall is looking. They did a whole new plan to do mixed use development because they have so much parking. So it's an important point, Roger, and I hope you'll stay involved in our parking efforts because that's coming up.
I think mixed use is one of the key words because
Totally.
you have some, and we're doing it a little bit on Columbia Pike. It's just a scratch, but it's a start of putting in residential capacity in there, whether it's a condominiums, apartments, townhouses, whatever, because we have a horrible housing shortage here. And this might help alleviate that, as well as putting people closer together so things are walkable and bikeable. Right now, they're not. You just about have to get in your car, even if 2 or 3 miles is not a lot in a car, but to walk that to the grocery store, the dry cleaner, what every time is that's just not feasible. Even if you could walk 2 or 3 miles, you don't want to. It takes an hour. So we've got to
Yeah.
move in that direction. And I'm glad to see you're thinking along those lines.
Yeah, and your district, Roger, it's Mason, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's particularly affected, and Zach talked about our CRDs, community rebite districts. A lot are in your area, so Bailey's, Seven Corners, Annandale, and those are areas that are just too auto-dominated, and we've got to address these streets. It's going to take decades, but we got to start somewhere.
Journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and some of that is some of the most bicycle unfriendly territory I can think of.
Yeah, exactly. And just again, who do you give the priority to? Can we balance it a bit, and it's not just for car throughput, but for placemaking, for people, and these are the kinds of things we're looking
I
at.
think Falls Church City has made some progress along Broad Street with that.
Totally.
Bicycle friendly, but it's more walking friendly. And I
Yeah.
also offer Seminary Road in Alexandria from down to Quaker Lane is now, I call it almost a complete street. And you do see more cycling there and more walking. And that's a residential neighborhood, a very expensive residential neighborhood, I might add. But it seems to work. And traffic does slow down there.
Yep.
You know, it used to be, now you see people doing 30 instead of 45 or 50. And I go down there every week, and I don't think that it's any slower by going that way than going 40 miles an hour.
Well, you've clearly got Roger on board, and that's step one. So fantastic. Thank you, Roger. Jeff, I did see you put your screen on. Did you want to add something in? Is there a commissioner that wants to ask a question? Happy to have a robust dialogue here.
Yeah, I had my hand up, Mike.
Yes.
Rachel, nobody, would argue here with what we're trying to do. I mean, everybody, I think it would be looking forward to that. We get the funding, we can't do it soon enough. But when you're carving up the pie, under One Fairfax, we have the issue of getting people in, maybe lower income communities to job sites that might be across town, probably, via connector routes. And how do we make sure that we're not putting too much attention on complete streets and losing sight of that objective?
Of ensuring they have
Ensuring
transportation.
Transportation to these thriving job sites that they may not have access to now.
Yeah, I don't think it's either or. I think it can be both and. We ensure that true complete streets also has good transit, whether it's buses or metro, one day BRT. So I think we always ensure that, unless I'm misunderstanding the question.
Well, I think it's not within the community, and maybe Tom will jump in, or Greg, but I'm thinking, from one end of the county to the other, if that's where the job is.
Oh, to ensure that we have transit to those.
Transit available to them that don't have it now.
Yeah.
So Kevin, Rachel is exactly right. It's not an either or. The transit is funded from a different pot of money than we would use for sidewalks and pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And so we are expanding our transit network. The connector just took over 6 routes from Metro and restored service on those routes that had been not operating because of the pandemic. Our transit development plan does have multiple additional routes that go cross county. So Springfield to Burke to the city of Fairfax out to the government center. There's some new express routes on I-66 from the Chantilly, Centerville area down to Springfield and Lorton. So we are looking to implement more of that cross county service to connect those people that are transit dependent.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
I do want to allow a question or two, but it's almost 9:15, and we're not going to get done by 9:30, but I do want to get done as close to that as we can. If I could ask if there's any urgent questions there. I do have a couple, one or two quick things I want to raise, but before that, is there a commissioner that does want to speak up right now?
Nothing urgent as far as a question, but
Go ahead, Pete.
I just love these discussions on urban street design and making place. And of course, I heard a word and a phrase I liked a lot tonight, and that was about Richmond Highway Corridor. And I heard Mr. Bashadny doing good things there, and I appreciate that. Zach and Greg and Rachel, everybody mentioned that it's an opportunity for making a real Main Street. And I appreciate everybody's efforts to that degree. And I encourage you, if you're thinking about coming there to do some work soon, go ahead and come now.
Come on.
But I'm just very, very happy to hear that a long neglected road is now getting a lot of attention, and we really need it and we appreciate it. So kudos to all you for your efforts, and look forward to engaging with you more and more. With that, I'll shut up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much, Pete. I will say, sort of a different kind of advertisement. The TAC does have work sessions. We have a framework there that every couple of weeks we can get together if we choose to dive into things more deeply. This is clearly a candidate for that kind of discussion. We just barely scratched the surface, and here we've been at it for over an hour. And so those are voluntary, as are all our activities here. So I think at some point we might want to do that, particularly tying in with the active Fairfax plan. I was pleased to see mentioning the comprehensive plan. Jeff, you here, wondering how that ties in as well. So it's good to see sort of a unified field theory piece of this coming up as well. The quick observation I sort of wanted to make was, the various plans and very much like the fact that you end with, next steps and what we're doing. That's exactly what we're looking at there. I don't know if this is, I just want to sort of confirm a little bit there. When we talk about implementing this, it seems to me, if I'm understanding correctly, the implementation strategy, so to speak, is to go with complete streets in the USSs. I guess it was chart 10. With the Innovation Center, with 7 Corners, Bayless Crosswalk, Springfield, etc. So am I correct that that's sort of like the next step? The ones on that chart are the ones that we're going to try and sort of implement the complete streets activities. Now, recognize there's some policy groundwork we need to lay with VDOT and DRPT and stuff like that. But I think if am I following correctly that that's where we really want to try and make this work first, or did I miss something?
So this is Jeff Herman with Fairfax County DOT. I can answer that one. So yes, you're right. We have a list of areas in which we'd like to focus on. You saw the list of the areas that we've already completed, as well as where we're going for Richmond Highway will be the next one. We don't have a specific priority order after that, but we're also thinking about an approach with VDOT that might run counter to how we've done it in the past. So we were going one area at a time, but to try and make this more an expedient process, we were going to talk to them about doing multiple areas at the same time once we finish our Richmond Highway. Not to hold that up, of course, since that's an important area that we want to make sure that we get those urban street standards in place. But there might be a process in place that we can work with VDOT to run multiple areas at the same time. So there's possibilities. We're running down options with VDOT on that, and that might get rid of the need to prioritize at that point.
Okay.
But it's following the DRPT process really as to how those areas were identified. It wasn't something that we necessarily made a selection other than what's in our comprehensive plan. It's following the DRPT's process for what areas will qualify under that process.
Okay, and we will continue our attention to this issue, not just for parking and Roger, but other activities as well. And look forward to working with you and perhaps helping advise and as you select which areas to focus on, which 2 or 3 to focus on. We'd be happy to try and provide some advice in that area to help you work through that. So thank you. The last little thing I just wanted to mention, Rachel, back to your the video that you showed in San Francisco in 1906. That was taken about a month before the earthquake. And the reason that footage survived is because it had been sent to, I can't remember where the location was, for processing. And that's why it survived the earthquake. So that is very much a time capsule that you just
How'd you know that?
Because that's a video that they have for a song, a Quantic, time, and I can't remember the name of the tune now that I want to call it, but I was very fascinated by the video and I looked it up. And that's what I did. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I was at a party in San Francisco and they played it on the wall. You know, sometimes they do that in bars and whatever. And I said, wow, imagine if we had that. So I just sat there at the party and filmed it for like
Okay.
5 minutes, eating up all my storage on my phone.
Well, it's come to good use.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate it very much. We do need to move on, but I would, Tom, if there's any closing remarks you'd like to make, any last reattacks you'd like to open up just for a moment here, Tom, sir, anything you'd like to add? Close it out.
Just very briefly, we'll continue to bring pieces of the active Fairfax plan back to you, pieces of the complete street plan as we get into the details of that, to be pulling all those together in comprehensive documents. A lot of the pieces are already there, as Greg has mentioned, but pulling them into one document, so it's much easier to refer to and easier to implement as well. But thanks for the opportunity to present tonight, and thanks to Greg and Zach for their presentation.
Very much so, very much so. And we weren't able to do it last month, but this actually probably worked out better. And so very, very glad that we're able to do this right, have the presentation, have the conversation. So really, really appreciate it. We need to move on to our next business about the Transportation Achievement Award. Of course, Tom, Rachel, everybody else, Shamali, you're welcome, of course, to depart. Shamali, I will just mention that in a little bit, we will be talking about potentially a meeting with the transportation aides for the Board of Supervisors. In fact, what we could do, if you'd like, is we can have that conversation right now while you're still here, if you are still here. Just to let you know what we're thinking while folks are still here together.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let me Chairman's prerogative to adjust the schedule just a little bit. I'm jumping ahead to the January 18th meeting, and there's a little bit of context we need to go through in terms of what we're planning to do. But this is in part, in large part, because of the preparation for our work plan that we need to present to the Board of Supervisors. Next meeting, we're planning to go over an outline of the draft work plan. We'll talk about that in a little bit so that we can discuss some items there, maybe send it out before, have some comments, discuss it on the 14th there. But what we want to do after that is use that as a discussion topic with the transportation aides for the Board of Supervisors. And so, Shamali, obviously you and your colleagues were gracious enough to join us. Gosh, it's been a while now. But the thought would be to do that in January, talk about the work plan, other things that come up. That's not the only thing we talk about. But because the work plan is incorporating what we think is a priority for what the TAC needs to be doing, some things we've learned, I think it's a good venue for a sort of a touch base with the transportation aides, to let them know what we're thinking, hear what you're thinking, use that as an assistance in socializing this with the supervisors, and of course, our board members and the commission members themselves. We can talk to their board members, but just wanted to use that as kind of a lens-setting opportunity. So hope you're interested in participating. What do you think a little bit? And do you think January might be a good time to do that? Any thoughts on how the schedules of the board would be, their individual schedules, so January might fit, or just wanted to give you a chance to provide some thoughts?
I mean, generally, I think that would be fine. You're getting close to the budget time when they kind of get consumed with that. So, but I wouldn't move it back to December right now. January would be, I think, appropriate. What do you think, Tom?
Okay. Okay.
Very good.
Well,
I
appreciate
think
that.
January would be fine.
Okay. Thanks, Don. Appreciate that. I think there's limits on what we can do to be prepared as well. I think we need to have a discussion as the TAC about our work plan to feel comfortable with where we're at and things like that. Not that we could take some positions if we wanted to, but just to get a chance to talk amongst ourselves a little bit, as amongst ourselves as any public body can be, prior to reaching out to the transportation aides. So we'll go ahead and reach out and try and do that then, because I know we want to give some lead time there for doing that. So, but I did want to just mention that while you're here, you're still welcome to stay if you like. But I also wanted to mention it as I say, so count this up just a little bit. Jamali, thanks very much for your participation this evening. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks. It's been a really great discussion. I've really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. And as also a member of the public, you and your colleagues are welcome to come at any time. So, but we'll get this right in order as it work out as we go forward. So again, appreciate it. Okay, with that, I'll go to the Transportation Achievement Award. And I know we've got 3 commissioners on the committee there for this. Linda, I believe. I believe if I remember correctly, my memory could be fading as I get older. I think you were the chair, and I know Pete had some suggestions there. So just want to take a status as to where we're at, and then I know we've got some proposals there. So I think we're prepared to make a decision here soon. But just wanted to get your thoughts on where we are and how we should finish this up. And Gesundheit, whoever was sneezing.
It was me. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. I guess I should hit mute.
So, okay. Pete, welcome to dive in. Again, I know that you came up with a couple of proposals, so appreciate that ever very much.
Well, do you want me to talk about the 2 that I've recommended? Is that what?
Well, what I wanted to do first was how many, Calvin? How many proposals or nominations do we have? I know we've got 2 that Pete provided. Was there a third one, or do you just have the 2?
We have one that from FCDOT staff.
Okay. So that makes a total of 3.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, if I recall correctly, I think we wanted our nominations to end about the 9th of November, it's the 16th. I think we've gotten 3 good ones. I don't think we need to solicit for any more. And so perhaps we just let the committee do its work and report back to us. There will need to, I think, be an announcement of a conversation, although what we had talked about previously was connecting the meeting for the Transportation Board with a commission meeting. Our next meeting is the 14th. So perhaps, have the committee meet before then. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud at 7, meeting would start at 7:30. I don't think we want to try and do it on the 7th with our the presentations to the Board of Supervisors, or on the 9th with our visit to the Mosaic District, although it's possible we could. Linda, are you still with us, or are you did you have to drop off? Okay.
Mike, I'm still on, and I think I'm a member of that committee.
Yeah, I think you are.
Is Mary Pauline chairing it? Am I right on that?
I thought Linda was, but and again, I should have done a better
I
job.
was, but I thought I was, but that's okay.
Oh, how could we forget?
I'll gladly surrender that to.
No, my apologies, Roger.
No.
I thought Pete, I thought I only saw, he mentioned 2 proposals. I thought maybe only 1 was attached, but perhaps if we finalize that it's 3, if Calvin could just resend the subcommittee, the 3 proposals, And Roger, just tell us when you want feedback or what you want us to do.
That's fine. I think we have to be careful with the FOIA rules and find some way to meet. Calvin's going to have to coach me on those rules. I presume we can meet in person. You're there, Calvin. Am I off base, or is that possible?
I have led it when there were 3 people in the past. And Calvin can obviously correct me, but you can meet in person and then it can go into a closed session because you are discussing, this falls into the category of rules where a closed session is permissible, because you wouldn't want this on the record as you're discussing and debating awards.
That's true, but if you're going to have more than 2 of you, you do have to have the meeting advertised.
Oh, yes, I wasn't saying not to advertise it, but you could do the closed session, I thought.
So it could be announced and the session would be closed, but it would be announced. Okay.
And then we go find a closet someplace and meet.
Well,
hopefully a bit more space than that, but maybe a parking lot, Roger.
But yeah, parking lot.
Is it too hopeful that we each read the proposals and just submit a vote to Roger, and if there's a majority vote for the winner, there wouldn't need to be a meeting?
I was wondering if it's possible that, I don't know who's going to go, but if we're having this meeting on the 9th of December in Mosaic, if we're all 3 there, we could just advertise the meeting, be in some bar in Mosaic, and we'll just meet, whether that would be kosher or not.
I don't think that works because that's social. We were setting it up to be strictly a social.
Yeah, I don't think that makes business and pleasure with FOIA.
So we're out of bounds there. All right.
Yeah, I like the idea of reading on our own, seeing
Yeah,
what happens and going from there.
And see what happens. I suppose we could submit our nominations or our opinions through Calvin. So I could say I like number 3. This is my rank choice. Voting is number 2, number 3, number 1, and send it to Calvin.
Well, actually, Roger, because you're the chair of the committee, they could send it to you, and Linda could send hers to you, and Kevin could send his to you.
Okay.
And then you look at yours and don't cheat. Don't just pick what they pick, unless you agree. And then, yeah, if there's an agreement, at that point, I'm trying to think of the mechanism for approving it there. We might need to announce a virtual closed meeting to have the conversation.
I think you still need to have, because there's 3 of you, unless one of you wanted to drop out, you would still need to have a meeting to have your vote.
What if we, if there wasn't a majority and we reported our vote to Roger, he sees the vote, there's a majority vote. Couldn't we just do it at the next TAC meeting if there was a majority vote for the approval as part of the next TAC meeting to make it official?
Well, the TAC does have to approve the committee's recommendation. If the committee is deadlocked for any reason, then yes, it goes to the TAC. But actually, I'll pick up on Roger's idea, but adjusting a little bit. I think we're going to have to announce our visit to the Mosaic District Connected Autonomous Vehicle Project. That's a meeting now, and the agenda is to do the tour. So we can have the committee meet during that visit. Maybe it's the first thing you guys get there.
That qualifies as a meeting then, and then after we've done the bus tour, then it's a social event, and that we kind of cross the line there.
After the bus tour is done, the meeting ends. And then
I'm going to refer that to Mary Pauline, who's our parliamentarian. Let us know what we're doing, is whether it
Well, I think technically you're the parliamentarian, but
This is Tom.
Yes.
I can help you with this. If you're advertised and you're having a meeting and it's advertised, then you can discuss your nominations at that time since it's been advertised.
So yeah, and I was gonna say, so then that would make sense. You guys go into closed session there because the important thing with this is you want to be in closed session because you don't want to have public the voting of the people who come in second or third. That doesn't necessarily look good to have that on record, the debate about the people that don't win the award.
So our deliberations, we don't have to have meeting notes or anything like that.
No, not for those. You would simply have on the record that you went into closed session, and then from then on, there's no notes about what is in that closed session.
And then we come out and the winner is, and that's
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if you want, go ahead, Tom.
Maybe the December 9th is the time. I mean, I'd like to go to that event there in Mosaic, and with Kevin and who's the other person?
Linda.
Me.
We're all going to be there. Linda?
Yep.
Make it a point to be there. But that means that we can look at the nominations prior to that. So when we show up for that closed session, we may all have a pretty good idea of what we want to do.
So we'll all just bring a little scratch pad with us with our notes and we can quickly discuss.
Sure.
Yeah, I will resend the nomination to the select committee, and so you can.
Please.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. So we'll, Roger, we'll just huddle in the back of the auto transit bus there and discuss it while we're riding over to the metro.
Yeah, we could do that. We'll go into a closed session on the bus. But...
Okay.
All right. Then if we do that, then we would put that meeting as the advertisement as part of our December 9th meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Quick question for other commissioners. What kind of visibility would you like to have into the nominations? Would you like to see the three so you can read them? Or just not see anything and whatever the committee says goes, which is kind of the way things have happened. But without knowing who's nominated or some description, it's a little tough for the commission to say, oh, that sounds like, oh, I agree. Because it's possible that, with these candidates that we might not all be unanimous about it. So I'm wondering if it's worthwhile to have the three nomination packages sent to the other commissioners for us to look at. The committee acts on it, and then if something comes different than what you would like, then we can discuss it. But I want to raise it here while we're together. Kelly.
I would just say, let's don't belabor the process. We've appointed a committee of people with whom we work, and we trust their judgment.
Okay.
And I'm okay with their judgment. I've learned that everybody on this commission has wisdom that comes from different sources and experiences. So whatever they choose, I'm good with.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I'm not saying I wouldn't be either. So any and I don't think it's a problem to sort of share the nominations with the other. I tell you what. Well, I'm curious to see the other ones, but I'm happy to take the will of the committee. But I also don't want to be an outlier here. I'm happy to let the committee just deal with it.
I mean, you are the chair, so it would make sense for you to have a copy of them. But I mean, I, for the most part, agree with Kelly that it defeats the purpose of having the committee if we're all reading through them and plan to debate on everything. Okay.
Whatever the commission decides here, we don't need to vote on this, but I just want to make sure commissioners are comfortable with this, and that's fine with me, certainly. Okay. Calvin, I'd like a copy of them, and maybe I'll get a chance to read them. If I don't, we know the committee is in good hands.
We're going to have to read them, so.
You're going to have to read them. You three are going to have to read them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. I think we've dispensed with that. Calvin, when the time comes to make the announcement for the visit to the Mosaic District, please add in there that there will also be an executive session of the Transportation Achievement Award Committee in closed session to review nominations for the award.
Now, if I have any comments about anything that I've read, Linda, Kevin do too, we would have to funnel that through Calvin, wouldn't we? In order to meet FOIA requirements.
Well, no, I think what happened is that, yes, the three of you can't talk together before the 9th, but you can talk individually. So that any two can talk to each other if you choose to do that. You certainly can send your recommendations to Chair Hoskin before.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If I have a specific question or concern on a nomination, I can communicate that to Roger. And
absolutely. And then kick off the conversation maybe on the 9th.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we can do this.
All right. Okay. Appreciate it. And moving on to December, and we've already been talking about it a little bit. Two events in quick succession. December 7th, and we are on the schedule for the Board of Supervisors to present the 2020 TAC Award and to the Mosaic Group relay that we're going to be visiting a couple days later, and to present to our former chair, Jeff Barnes, a Lifetime Achievement Award. So do need to put a write-up together there. Kevin, I know we've talked about, appreciate you providing some inputs there for that. I have reached out to Dale Caslow, Ed Anaptian, and Anna Nissanen, and haven't heard back yet, but going to communicate with them about just make sure we've got the right team members identified, and who should be invited there to the event as well. But part of the idea, as we mentioned before, is since we want to present the award, since we're going to visit them a couple days later, it would be nice to have the award presented beforehand if we can. So, but that is set up there. The last piece, which is not an official event, but Mary Pauline, I know we talked about having a social event afterwards. I think you selected a location, or you thought about a location. Where do we stand with that?
Well, everyone seems to want to do the caboose.
Okay.
Now we cannot make reservations there unless we want to pay for the reservations.
Okay.
Now I can look at other locations in that area if we want to, but it does seem like it seems that for our size, and we don't seem to have a set number. I know it seems like some people wanted to bring significant others or plus ones. So if we could try to get a better idea of exactly how many people we're going to be having, I was looking at a tentative 15 people, but I'm not sure about the exact number. But it seems like for that number of people to have reservations at just about any place, we're going to either need to do a walk-in or we're going to need to pay some sort of fee.
Which I'm sure is not going to be cheap.
Correct.
You're right. Quick question, Calvin. Remind us, please, with the timing for the project visit. Was it 3 to 4?
He had said to 4, yeah.
3 to 4?
Yeah, I think I might have like 4 or 5 respond, but I can send an email out asking for reconfirmation again.
I'm pretty sure it's 3 to 4. Now it might change, but I think that's the last I saw. And the reason I bring it up now, of course, is that if we're done at 4:15, across the street, we're there at 4:15 on let's see, December 9th is
Thursday.
So 4:30 on a Thursday. If we get there first, we belly up to the bar and we're there.
Sorry, you asking for the time? I think it's at 3. Yes. I think we do.
That time of day, it's not going to be a problem on a Thursday.
I wouldn't think so.
And but then again, it is getting close to some of the holiday parties.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't recall getting any requests for locations or whatever. So, and I'm fine with whatever you pick, but could you just make sure I'm on if you have any further, you need any further input?
I didn't send out any requests. This was discussed at our last meeting that everyone was kind of throwing out ideas.
Okay, that explains it. Okay.
I will say that anything else in Mosaic is smaller than the caboose. So
Yeah, so no, and I do kind of think that is probably the best, and that's probably where we'd have the best luck there, probably walking in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am waiting to
Good
find
year.
out from them. I'm not entirely sure how much it would cost to reserve something. They haven't gotten back to me yet.
Okay.
As to whether we on our own would want to throw in, depending on how much it costs, but I don't feel like it would be worth it because then we're also on the hook for having to order so much food and drink and things like that. I feel like walking in is probably our better bet.
I would agree. I would agree. And part of the Mosaic District, there are some other locations, and although this definitely sounds like the best one, I think we're there early enough that we should be there before the crowd. Given the advanced age of some of our members, like myself included, who knows how long we'll last? By 5:30, 6 o'clock, that could be it. Out like a god. That's all I can do. Or maybe get a second wind and have dinner afterwards. Who's to say? But no,
I've been in there when it's really busy and they can handle it. So,
okay.
and I've seen really big parties there and they handle it.
All right. All right. Well,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just to back up a second on that achievement award for Jeff, what did you need from me? And I'd seen Jeff Sunday night at the Fairfax Federation Awards where he gotten the award. Do you want me to just send you that citation? And when were you planning to? Are you going to notify Jeff?
I have already, and I've communicated with him, and he's going to be able to join us.
That's since Sunday, because Sunday he said he hadn't heard anything from the TAC.
Really? Because no, I talked to him before then.
Well, maybe he misunderstood my question, but I didn't want to announce the award because I thought you were going to do that. So
okay.
I didn't come out and say, hey, did you know you're getting the achievement award?
I tell you what, since what I'll do is I'll send you the email there. We'll communicate offline about that. And yeah, Kevin, just the write-up perhaps for the Citizen of the Year, or really, connection with the TAC, some history there, stuff he's done with transportation, the TAC, more specifically rather than sort of more generally than he would have.
Yeah, that was kind of what I wrote in his nomination. Unfortunately, he didn't get Citizen of the Year, but he got a citation. So I'll just send you everything that's up on the website and what I.
Okay. All right, appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think we're done with our December planning here. If we've forgotten some things, we'll work through Calvin, send emails out. But yeah, we'll plan on going to the caboose afterwards, 3 o'clock for the Mosaic visit there. Before that, there'll be the committee meeting, and then on the 7th, we'll have the presentations. So it'll be a busy couple of days, and appreciate commissioners taking the time to do it. This is a very gratifying. Public comment period. Are there many members of the public here who would like to speak? Any Boy Scouts this time, perhaps? Or we've run them out of town now? For Zach. Okay. All right. Moving on then to other business and announcements. The December TAC meeting here. I forgot when I put the agenda together that we decided to move up the December meeting to the 14th. I caught that when I was looking at the notes, so our next meeting will be on the 14th. Do want to talk about the draft work plan. My thought here is, as we talked about last time, want to lay out the outline of what the work plan would look like. What I would like to do is solicit commissioners now, not this minute, but prior to the December meeting, if you could, any thoughts you've got on things you want to make sure I focus on, although you can see from the 2021, 2022 work plan stuff I put together before, you can tell where I'm going. We've talked about it quite a bit. I want to put some strategy pieces in there. We talked here tonight about some of the integration or the coordination of the active Fairfax plan, the complete streets, the counter strategic plan. So these are all pieces we want to put in there. What I want to do is kind of frame up kind of what we want to look at. I'm not looking to make specific recommendations. That's what we do next year. and then we go through and then we decide exactly what we want to do with Active Fairfax in each of these things. So I also don't want the December meeting to be too long, so I'm not looking to add anything else to the agenda. Although if there's a topic we need to discuss, we can certainly do that. Alexis, I see your picture. Is that just the natural rotation of WebEx, or would you like to add a comment?
I did have a comment about a possible agenda item on the December meting, but
Okay.
I'm sensitive to the fact that we don't want to extend the time or the agenda. It's time sensitive, which is why I wanted to talk about it next month, but I did want to try and talk about potential TAC resolution about safe routes to school. It is the school board budget is going to be, decisions about it are going to be made in mid-January. And the program, which has been funded for the last 7 years by a federal grant distributed through VDOT, is not going to be funded anymore by the federal government. So the ask is for the Board of Supervisors and/or the county schools to look at funding that they already have to get allocated to this program. What I would like to do is prepare some materials and background on the topic for the TAC to look at ahead of the December meeting. And if there's interest in discussing further, then we can. So that was the only thing I wanted to bring up.
That's a good one. Absolutely. We're very open to doing that if it's necessary. One thing I would, and appreciate you mentioning bringing some materials together. That would, of course, be very helpful. Is there someone from FCDOT or maybe even the school board that you think might be appropriate to join us to have a conversation about it?
The program has been essentially run by one woman for the last 7 years. I don't know if she would be available or open to speaking about it. I have a lot of background materials from her. And I can follow up to ask if she'd like to talk about it. I'm not sure how much anyone from the school board might be interested in talking about it, since all the budget stuff is coming up for them, and they're kind of sensitive about talking about that stuff.
Makes sense.
Out of their formal settings.
Okay.
I don't know, Kelly, do you have any insight on that you want to throw in, or should I just? I think you know a little bit about the program as well. Should I continue down a path of just gathering what I have access to present to the TAC?
I think gathering what you have access to, and Sally Smallwood is the woman, and she is very, she's very open about coming and talking to anybody, because basically if they don't fund it, then this program, she spent 7 years investing in our school system. I mean, she has not only taught hundreds of kids to ride through this program, but she has empowered the PE teachers to continue it. Many, many schools have sets of bikes now to do this. So if it goes away, that's just a waste. Those bikes just sit around and don't get used. So, I mean, and it's teaching our kids how to move safely on these same complete streets that we're trying to create for them. So, yeah,
it's not just bike education. It's it's other kinds of improvements about getting to school, walking or biking and whatnot. So,
and I think the people that are on the supervisor staffs who are involved either with schools or transportation or both, maybe an invitation to them to listen in while Sally's talking about this, so that they can inform their supervisor how important this is. And the only other thing I would think, Alexis, is if there are any community members who can talk about how much their family has benefited, and Sally would know those families.
Okay.
That's powerful.
Thank you.
Alexis, just a quick question. I'm completely unfamiliar with the program, but if it's going to be an agenda item, would you need any input from Fairfax County Police regarding safety or enforcement?
That's not a bad idea. I think that there's been some coordination with, I know FCPD has been involved in some of the bicycle education programs, like with the traffic gardens and whatnot, so that they may have some insights. That's a good idea.
this is excellent first steps to sort of frame the issue up. And Alexis, look forward to talking to you as this goes forward, because I think we absolutely can put on the agenda, at least as an intro, and perhaps taking action. What is this deadline in January that the money plug gets pulled?
They're having their budget hearings coming up. So on January 13th is when the proposed fiscal year 23 budget is released. And so leading up to January 13th are when there are input opportunities from the Board of Supervisors and from the public to say.
Whose budget, by the way, is this federal budget?
Sorry, the Fairfax County Public School budget.
Okay.
They do their budget hearings in December and early January, and then they make their final decisions involving the county executive office in February for the upcoming school year. So since this grant money is no longer available through VDOT / the federal government, the ask is to see if either the school can allocate. And it's a very small amount of money. I think it's been $125,000 over the last 7 years.
125 total?
Yeah.
125 each year.
Yeah, no, $125,000 split up, divide by 7. So it's like $18,000 a year. It's not a huge amount of money. That's had a pretty big impact in our schools. So the ask is to see if to have the schools allocate the money or get the Board of Supervisors to allocate it through FCDOT or some combination of.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know we'll be talking about this to some degree next month. I'm confident, but I will just ask a question here. Noel, if you're still with us, I'm not sure. We've not reached out to the school board. We advise Board of Supervisors. I'm not saying we can't reach out to the school board. Have you seen any precedents there? Any concerns, Noel, if you're with us, that you might warn us about or questions about just in the beginning, or do whatever we want? Are you with us, Noel? I know you were here earlier, so okay.
My goal would be to get this more towards the attention of the Board of Supervisors, who in turn have influence. I think that's what where our role is, really. Not that we could not talk to the school board or get their input or collaborate with them, but I think the target is our supervisors.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things we'll want is a schedule of when the budget decisions are, so that we can, include that appropriately. I don't want to prejudge any actions obviously on behalf of the TAC, whether we support it or not support it. Admittedly, 18,000 a year does not sound like a lot, but we want to be thoughtful about it. Yes, I think we absolutely can add to the agenda. I think it's worth talking about. And then, the TAC can just determine what it wants to do. So, yes, please do pull some stuff together. Happy to talk to you about the framing of the timing and things like that. Because you and I can talk, that's legal, and then determine how we might want to tee it up most efficiently and effectively for the TAC with the schedule.
Just, a quick point on that, Alexis. I don't know if I disagree with you on that, but I thought my understanding of they go neck and neck on the funding between the school board and the Board of Supervisors. But once the Board of Supervisors approves the school board budget, I thought it was their money to do with whatever they want. So I guess our supervisors could strongly suggest that,
they have influence. Yeah. I mean, they have a decent amount of influence. And so, when I say that they're our target, I mean, we are appointed by our Board of Supervisors. We make resolutions and recommendations to our Board of Supervisors. So I think it's in my opinion, and I could be talked out of this, my opinion, it's more appropriate for our commission to say to our Board of Supervisors, this should be a priority. And then to have our Board of Supervisors make that determination of, okay, this is what we're hearing from our advisory commission.
That's fine, but I wouldn't be adverse to inviting a representative from the school board to be part of this discussion.
Sure, I agree.
I'm not either, although I want to be careful as we recognize, Alexis, you just pointed out again, we advise the Board of Supervisors. So I want to be deliberate about how we approach the school board, should we do that, either to communicate with them or have them come meet with us and things like that. I'm not afraid of doing it. I just want to make sure that we're, that things are done, appropriately, whatever that is. So, okay. Yes, let's, we can add that to the agenda there. If nothing else, just an introduction, and then, we'll see how far the conversation goes. So, okay. So that would be it for December. Things come up, but that would be what we have on the agenda.
Maybe a quick email from Calvin, because I mean, again, I'm probably the only one because I missed the meeting, but just a quick email that you've moved the meeting to the 14th from the 21st, I guess, next month.
Yeah, I forgot about that because I was looking at the notes, and then I realized that yes, we decided to do that. In fact, that was right the last thing we did during the meeting. We decided to move that forward. So yeah, Calvin, we'll have to. We're announcing it now, but yeah, it'll have to be announced publicly as well. But yes.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Okay. All right. Next, I'll do the chairman's report. I'll be brief. Two things I just wanted to mention very briefly. As I've mentioned a number of times in the past, still working on the Confederate Names Task Force. There's 3 more meetings. Each of them are voting meetings. The first one is to determine whether the street names are going to be changed. That's scheduled for November 30th. December 13th, voting on a slate of alternative names. December 20th, voting on the task force final recommendations report to be presented to the board of supervisors. I will say that during the last meeting, I said that I'm open to changing the names and probably vote to do so. But I also will at the next meeting raise the issue of financing. It is not, it costs money to do this, the county and citizens. And so the board needs to be aware of that. I recognize this is not just a financial decision, clearly, but that needs to be incorporated. If nothing else, the board needs to be mindful of the effect on individual citizens. Should it try and offer some assistance in some way, maybe some help with red tape or registration and things like that, and also raise the question: are we planning to change more street names, or maybe can this be it? Because if we keep changing street names, we'll keep changing maps, and it'll have these costs over and over and over again. So I'll raise those issues during the conversation.
Mike,
go ahead.
To comment, one unfortunate consequence, think of this. Arlington County has already changed the name of Lee Highway. So you're taking Lee, well, it used to be Lee Highway in Arlington County, driving into Fairfax. You've got, a name change. Same road now has 2 names.
Well, the roads do change names all over the place, but one of the candidates for, if there's a change, but honestly, reading the tea leaves and the way members of the Confederate Names Task Force were voicing their opinions, I think it's likely the names will change. But one of the options clearly is to use the name that Arlington County used. And so perhaps the name does not change. And there definitely does not seem to be a desire on the part of the task force members to name it after another person. There definitely seems to be an idea, just name it after your, Little River Turnpike again, which apparently is what I think Lee Highway used to be called back 100 years ago. And so using more geographic representations. So hopefully that part is a little easier.
It's Langston Highway now in Arlington.
Is that what they called it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, we'll see what they've done. So, I appreciate it.
Remember on that particular, on Langston Highway and Lee Highway, that there's an interlude in there where it's called Washington Boulevard in Falls Church City.
Yes, good point.
Which is be confusing even to people that live around here.
Yes. So it is likely that the task force last word on the issue won't necessarily be definitive because there could be a small section that is called something else. We'll have to work through that. But I did just want to mention that's the plan. So they intend to have it all done by the 20th of December. The other thing I'll mention is Tyson's Transportation Management Association has initiated an activity looking at updating their teammate policies, transportation demand management incentives. Looking forward now post-pandemic, focused right now on Tyson's Corner, which could be applicable in other areas as well. I'm sure if Tom, and I don't think Tom is with us anymore. I hope not, all due respect. Hopefully he's back with his family now. But Tom is a member of that group and has participated in the meetings there. They've got another one tomorrow, and then they've got a number of meetings coming up over the next few months or so. They're meeting on Wednesdays. They're doing best practices, some exercises, prioritization and discussion and things like that. So that actually is very interesting. And as many commissioners know, TDM and the telework is something I've been very interested in, something I'm sort of watching over from the TAC perspective. And so this is a great opportunity to be part of the conversation in the Tysons area. So I'm participating in that as well, and I'll keep the TAC updated on what's going on. At some point, it might be worthy of a presentation, but I'll keep folks posted about that, and we can talk about that even when the time comes. So that's what I had. What I like to do here is go through the commissioners' updates, and I'd like to go through in the same order that we called the roll. See if you've got any things you'd like to add. Starting first with our at-large member, Linda Sperling. Linda, anything you'd like to raise for the good of the TAC?
No, not today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin Morse, how about you, sir?
A couple of quick things. One to Calvin, and don't Calvin, don't spare my feelings, but the sign on is it operator error here, or do we have technical problems with the website?
I got technical problem with the website, and I could not get website started. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I tried for about like 15 minutes until it's finally working.
All right. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something that
because I have to start the meeting. I have to start the meeting first before you can be able to sign in.
But it's so if you're, because they kept telling me I had incorrect passwords and I used both of them, and
I'm not sure what happened, but we were started late, and at the point that I saw your email, I had not started the meeting yet, so it might be that problem.
it might, so you might have to put the passwords in after you.
know, I have to start the meeting first before anyone can join in here.
Yeah, but once the meeting was started, I was able to get in regularly. I think I just hit the green button and I got in.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was in the same spot as you, Kevin, and I just hit refresh a couple times, and eventually it let me join.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened this time. I did say that, I don't have an account with WebEx, and,
Okay. All right. Well, I just, just as long as it wasn't a geezer attack on my part here that I couldn't get it right. But
next at the next meeting, I will start it at 7. So give us time to.
Or 7:15 at least.
7:15. All right. Lots of time for chit chat. Quickly, the second thing was, and I probably should have snuck this in earlier when Rachel and Tom were here, but maybe Pete can answer it. Maybe, and I'm going to try and answer it quickly. You tell me if I'm right, Pete. If I'm a commuter, which I'm not on Richmond Highway, but if I'm a commuter and I come in Monday on my commute and see the speed limits lowered by 10 miles an hour, would your answer back to me saying, don't get unnerved, you're really going to get to your destination in about the same amount of time because we've redesigned this and the lights and everything's going to work a little smoother? So a lower speed limit is not really costing you your valuable time.
The way I understand it, what you just said is basically true. If at 45 miles an hour, you move 50,000 cars through the area. At 35 miles an hour, you still move the same 50,000 cars through the area. The difference is the speed that you're traveling maximum. But on Richmond Highway during rush hour, no one drives 45. It's about 35. Yeah, so I mean, now off rush hour, yeah, you can do 45 and sometimes 50 for short periods of time. But during rush hour, no one does 45.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Thanks, Kevin.
I'm done. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, Dr. Mill, Kelly, anything more to add, please?
I got nothing.
All right, because you had a lot before. Appreciate your contributions. Roger, Mason District.
Yes, last Friday I attended the Access for All Subcommittee of the Transportation Planning Board, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, of which I'm a part. And there was some discussion there, not that I have to bring it up tonight, but I think the idea of access for all should probably be part of our own thinking in our transportation planning. Because the handicapped, the elderly, especially people low income, especially since some notion of transportation justice is going to color what we're doing, that I'm going to start bringing some of this stuff up when we're thinking about access for all in the transportation in Fairfax County. So expect a little more noise from me out of this.
Become an activist, okay.
Yeah, I've been doing this. And there are some real problems. They were special bus services for people who need transportation for daycare, doctor's appointments, and whatnot, and some of this kind of stuff. And we do that here too.
Okay.
We may have to do more of it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned.
Since we're a graying community, some of us are more gray and bald than others, but we're all getting there if we're lucky.
It's all about degrees. Some of us are there. Yes, exactly. Okay. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate it. Mount Vernon, Pete.
Nothing other than a thank you to Kelly and the rest of the TAC for kind of urging me on to nominate some folks. One, I did nominate the Mount Vernon supervisor and all of his staff because of the bike ride they have every year, the Tour de Mount Vernon. I wouldn't have done that without urging. And I did nominate a North Gateway group from FCDOT. And really, the reason I'm bringing this up is when I reached out to both these groups to tell them that I was considering nominating them, they were so appreciative. And to them, it really meant something. So just a heads up to the rest of the TAC group, people seem to have really liked the idea of a little recognition. So.
Sort of like an Academy Award nomination, even if you don't get the award.
Yeah,
it's an honor just to be nominated.
Exactly, and they boy, both groups were very appreciative to be someone thought about them. So.
Well, thank you, and Pete, really appreciate you putting the proposals together, the nominations together. It's above and beyond, and we really appreciate it. I know the groups do, and we do too as well. Yeah. It's an honor to be able to consider them.
Yep. But that's all. Thank you all.
Thank you. Lee District, Alexis.
Thanks. I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Providence District, Monsieur Hancock, Jeremy.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Thank you. Springfield, Eric.
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you very much. Sully, David Skiles. Anything to add to the mix?
I think he left.
It does seem that way. Okay. Well, that leaves us to, once again, last but not least, our vice chair, who will then have the honor of moving for adjournment once she's done with her next 20 minutes of updates. I know she's going to give us. To you, Mayor Pauline, anything you'd like to?
I don't want you all to throw your virtual stones at me, so I move to adjourn.
I hear a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Everybody seconds. I think we'll give that to Pete. Okay, there's been a motion to adjourn, seconded. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Good. We are adjourned at 10:12 p.m. Thanks for another productive meeting, and look forward to next month's activities. They should be
Good
fun.
night.
Good night, all.
Thank you very much, everyone.
See you on the 14th. Good night.
Okay, good night. Or the 7th or the 9th there, Kevin.
No, 7, Eric. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
See you
that
before
one
the
is.
14th.
That's right. We're gonna be here to just be together all the time.